Welcome to Weird PVD, the podcast. Every week, your host, Sherry Kasperzak, takes you to the odd corners of beautiful Providence, Rhode Island. From big blue bugs to unique art, from weird history to weird food, you'll never look at Rhode Island's creative capital the same again. Tune in every Weird Wednesday.
What is up, weirdos? First and foremost, I am so sorry for missing last week's episode. This time last week, I was incapacitated in my bed with what might be the worst case of flu I have ever had in my life, but I am back now. Forgive my voice, this nasal thing going on. It is the remnants of said flu, and I'm doing my best to get back out there to bring you some juicy weirdness. Now, when you think of sunny, summery Newport, Rhode Island, vampires are probably not the first thing that comes to mind. But one sweeping Newport mansion was home to vampires for 5 years. And as if that wasn't enough, it's housed sailors, students, and even adult film stars. Seaview Terrace, one of Newport's glorious mansions, located at 207 Ruggles Avenue, was the exterior of Collinwood Mansion in the 1960s Gothic soap opera Dark Shadows. But some say that the mansion may have its own real life Gothic elements. It's rumored that the lady of the house, who lived there for only 4 years after the mansion was renovated, may haunt the property. And if you're in the market for a 43,000 square foot mansion with 29 bedrooms and 18 bathrooms, you are a little too late. The mansion unfortunately sold in January for $16 million. Now, that was the largest residential sale the city has had since 2021. But given that the home was originally listed at $30 million, that's practically a steal. Today on Weird PVD, the podcast, we're talking about the weird history of Seaview Terrace, one of Newport's most magnificent mansions, and I'll cover its roots and its many iterations from a liquor baron's castle on the sea to a Gothic soap opera icon to an adult film set. But Seaview's story doesn't actually begin in Rhode Island. It begins in the DuPont Circle neighborhood of Washington, D.C. The mansion was originally built in 1867 by flour merchant William Galt. Now, in 1907, liquor baron, which by the way is the best title ever, and I will henceforth be requiring you to refer to me as liquor baron or possibly the baroness. We can shorten it a little. Anyway, liquor baron Edson Bradley took ownership of the property and expanded it into this massive home that took up an entire city block. Now, it was nicknamed Aladdin's Palace because of its immense size. And the Bradleys remained at the mansion in DuPont Circle for about 15 years until their Syracuse, New York summer home burned to the ground in 1922. Now, Edson decided that this tragic event should become a fresh start, so he had the family's DuPont Circle home moved brick by brick to Newport. It's quite possibly the largest home to ever be moved by rail and road. The Bradleys had already purchased an English manor style home in Newport, but they decided they wanted to incorporate the bricks from their DC home to create this massive castle-like structure on the sea. It was a 50th wedding anniversary gift from Edson to his wife, Julia. The Bradleys reportedly collected so many antiques that not all of them would fit inside of Seaview. And this is a reminder that this was a 40,000 square foot house. The antiques will come into the story a little later on, so keep them in mind. Perhaps one of the most stunning features of the mansion were the stained glass windows. These are 16th century windows from Holland, the Carmelite Church in Germany, and early Renaissance window designed for the Milan Cathedral in Italy. Seaview was decorated with English wood paneling and Italian plaster ceilings, pieces from the Middle Ages all the way to contemporary American art. Think Chippendale chairs, think Chinese porcelain, paintings, tapestries, wrought iron torch holders, and medieval Italian lanterns. Now that is the vibe we're going for. And if someone could hook me up with some of those, that'd be great. This is all to say that this place was pretty elaborately decorated for a family that lived there for only 10 years. Julia died in 1929, just 4 years after the mansion was completed. And rumor has it that she's still there to this day. In fact, stories claim she loves to play her favorite organ, and witnesses claim that she was playing that organ after her funeral services back in 1929. Now, this is where the downfall of Seaview begins. After Julia Bradley died, and in the years leading up to Edson's 1935 death, the property was transferred to the couple's daughter, Julie Bradley Shipman. And it's after Julia's death that the hits just keep on coming for the Bradleys. So, quick side quest. As you might recall, Edson and Julia lived in DC for many years, and you might also recall that Edson was a liquor baron again. The Baroness will be fine. You might also remember that in the early 1920s and into the 1930s, a little thing called Prohibition was going on. The reason Edson was in DC was to lobby against prohibition, given that his livelihood depended upon the production of bourbon. You see, Edson was the president of W.A. Gaines and Company. Now, that was a whiskey distiller out of Frankfort, Kentucky. And as prohibition rolled on, Edson's wealth started to dry up. And this meant that Seaview started to fall into disrepair. In 1930, right after Julie took over the property, her husband Herbert Shipman died. She continued to summer in Newport until 1941. In 1943, Julie married naval captain John Charles Fremont III, but after their marriage, she died about 5 years later. I'm telling you, this family had some weird and wild, nonstop bad luck. I don't know what happened, but bad luck. Since the 1930s, the vultures had already been circling, and to keep them at bay, Edson held an auction for those antiques that I mentioned earlier that just wouldn't fit inside their 40,000 square foot mansion. It was one thing after another for the family, and after her husband died, Julie remained in her home until 1943. Now, in 1941, Seaview's tax valuation was $145,800 just a decade and a half after it was renovated for a cost of $2 million. This left Julie with no choice but to sell the estate in parcels. Julie Shippen stayed in New York while the auction took place, having 5 days to accept or reject offers. She turned them down, and this really shocked a lot of people. But she discovered that the potential purchaser was a well known gambler. But just 7 months after she turned down that auction bid, Julie neglected to pay her property tax bill of $9,945, and Seaview was seized by the tax department and put up for auction yet again. Now, Newport being an important naval base during World War II, Seaview was acquired for use as a naval officer's mess, but it continued to fall into disrepair and very quickly became a burden to the city. About 6 years after it was acquired as the officer's mess, Seaview was sold to Edward J. Dunn for $8,000. Now, Dunn had recently acquired Belcourt Castle, also in Newport, and he quickly sold it for a small profit to Susan Hood Emerson, who was apparently a distant cousin to Ralph Waldo Emerson. Now, by 1950, Seaview was a summer boarding school called Burnham by the Sea, and during the winter, it was the Newport School for Girls. Now, here's where all you Dark Shadows fans will be delighted. Seaview became the exterior of Collinwood Mansion in 1966. The mansion served as the external model for Collinwood only. The rest of the vampire soap opera was filmed on a soundstage in New York. Now, none of the interior scenes from Dark Shadows actually match Seaview's interior. As it turns out, Dark Shadows fans are quite fond of visiting Seaview, even to this day, although it's a private residence and it isn't open to the public. Over on the subreddit r/Dark Shadows, some fans recalled their trips to Newport to visit the Gothic mansion. One user wrote, I visited back in the 90s when it was still the music school for the college. That's Salve Regina University. We'll get that to that in just a minute. The grounds and part of the house were open to the public, and in the foyer, the receptionist knew immediately who was there for Dark Shadows reasons and was very welcoming. User Vampire Gems wrote, I went there a few years ago, seemed to be privately owned, no way to really get close to it. I went on a really bumpy gravel back road around the house, took a few pictures from the street, then a cop showed up. Luckily, he didn't say anything, but I was already on my way out when he appeared. So, back to the mansion's history. Sometime in the 1970s, the mansion was no longer in use and it rapidly fell into disrepair. It was snapped up in 1974 by Martin and Millicent Carey for $270,000, the equivalent of like $1.5 million today. The Careys were New Yorkers and they quickly set to work restoring the mansion to its former glory, especially restoring those beautiful stained glass windows. Now, reportedly, the Careys had originally planned to turn the mansion into a business, seminar, and conference center, but that plan failed. Not long after the couple bought Seaview, the Careys allowed a film crew in to shoot their film. The film was called The Story of Joanna, and it was a pornographic film, it turns out. It has themes of sadomasochism, and I've never seen the film, but from what I've read in my research, this was a pretty hardcore movie. I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, let me know if it's any good. Drop a comment. It seems a little silly by today's standards for such a thing to garner moral outrage, but the Newport Society folks were simply appalled that the Careys had allowed a pornographic film to be shot on their property. The Careys, to their credit, say that they had no idea what kind of film it was, and once they did discover it, they asked the film crew to leave, but never to worry. The filming was completed at Winfield Hall, another property that the Careys owned. Having changed their minds about the business seminar and conference center, the Careys leased the mansion to Salve Regina University, and it served as the musical conservatory, educational facility, and student housing until 2009. And then, well, the mansion was basically unused. The property officially went on the market for $30 million in 2025, and it found a buyer earlier this year for half that asking price. Now, like most massive mansions built more than 100 years ago, the Carey Mansion has its tales of hauntings and other paranormal activity. In fact, one of those ghost hunting shows, uh, I think it was Ghost Nation, visited the mansion in October of 2020. According to Rhode Island Monthly, built in 1907 by whiskey millionaire Edson Bradley, Seaview Terrace, aka Burnham by the Sea, aka Carey Mansion, aka the creepy manor facade seen in ABC's Dark Shadows, is the largest privately owned Gilded Age estate in Newport. Local legend has it that Bradley's wife, Julia Williams Bradley, was quite fond of the residence, and following her funeral at the grounds chapel in 1929, she couldn't resist making it her afterlife address as well. In October 2020, Ghost Nation visited the French Gothic mansion for a paranormal investigation, and stars of the show claimed to hear pacing, whispers, and knocking. According to Paranormal Unknown, visitors and past residents have reported hearing footsteps echoing through Carey Mansion's vast hallways. Some have also felt cold spots in the rooms, despite no apparent draft. These experiences fuel rumors of lingering spirits. Local legends suggest Edson Bradley's wife, Julia, may roam the halls. Witnesses claim to see a figure in a vintage gown near the grand staircase. Paranormal investigators have detected unexplained voices and shadowy apparitions, further adding to the mansion's ghostly allure. So that, my friends, is the story of Seaview Terrace, aka the Carey Mansion. If you liked this episode, please do me a huge favor. Like and share. If you're watching on YouTube, kindly subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please hit that follow button. All the support I get is so appreciated. Weird PVD, the podcast, is still currently a labor of love for me. So I appreciate all the likes and shares and follows and subscribes and all that good stuff. If you like that kind of thing, why don't you give me a follow over on Instagram? You'll find me there at weird_PVD. If you're a fan of medical oddities and weird history, you can also find me over on TikTok. I'm there at weird.pvd. And don't forget to keep PVD weird.